Yeah, where is it?
It's over here. Follow me.
How are
Look
you?
at David. Oh, hey, man. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm happy.
Good. That's great to hear.
You look charming and handsome as ever.
Yeah, well, I got two little rascal girls. I'm in my 60th year and I'm raising a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I'm having children really late in life, and it's really the most incredible journey. When your children tell you their visions and they're coming from this untainted place, there's just nothing like it. It just seems all the more real.
Well, I mean, and are they indigos or crystal or,
I don't really I don't really know as far on that level, but like I'll give you an example. My daughter Lyra, who's 10 now, and we were living in Sedona when you and I
remember.
last met with Karen Kobnick, and And that's where Alira was born. And we moved to Nelson, British Columbia, Canada, in the mountains, and we're on a 2-acre forested area here. And my daughter Alira, one night in the middle of the night, these balls, about the biggest beach balls, were glowing with light, and they came into her room and they were blowing all the papers around. This is what, she's telling me. And and my littlest one, Staria, who's 5, and when she was born on 9/11, the star Vega was like straight above the house at 8:03 p.m. on 9/11, 2015. And she remembers these really tall beings around her when she was born. And she's telling me this at 4 years old. So, and she said they were as tall as the ceiling, which is 9 feet. And it's just incredible when, you hear these stories. I don't have religious pictures around in the house. And I don't really put ideas in their head. I just want to see what their experience is, and what they tell you, so it's incredible. We come into these bodies and we don't know anything outside of them, consciously. I mean, unconsciously there's a connection. But
you're a spiritual being, though, David. You're chosen to come here, and you choose to come here. There is nothing odd, strange about it. And the story of the giants and the tall beings, the Nephilims and the Watchers, and people record, these are people who come to hold space.
Mm-hmm.
And they are perfectly the way that she's described them. So many other people in a lot of different situations are describing these same type of guardians just the way she's describing it. So I don't have any problems in that. That's a true perspective. I believe everybody who is born comes and stays connected to their 6 and 7 years old, and then they begin to transition into this dimensional reality. But until then, people stay connected to the world that they came from before they came into this reward system.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when my daughter Lyra turned, I would say 8 or 9, she didn't report the stuff anymore. Like,
no, you're here.
One day she gave this at 4 years old, Alira, who's now 9, I'm 10, told me this whole story about how our sun actually created us as bodies and even as souls, our physical sun on a higher dimensional level. And she was talking for about an hour and a half, and then as soon as she entered the school system and started getting, regular, being around other kids, all that stuff just stopped.
No, it goes away.
It goes away.
But you're describing Amen Ra. What you're describing to me is her describing an ancient Egyptian,
right.
An ancient Egyptian ceremonial system of Amen Ra, the sun god, and Ra, the light, as I know it as mythology, but she's describing that ancient Egyptian cultural perspective of the sun.
Right, as the sun, as a living being, as an intelligent being, as a being that is connected to all the planets in its solar system, and its photons are recording everything that's going on here. Because our bodies are conversely emitting, electromagnetic radiation. We're always. You ever put on military goggles and gotten really close to somebody's chest? It kind of blinds you because of the infrared light sensors in the goggles. You get too close to their chest and you can see how much light's coming off a person's heart. And so that light came from the sun and it goes back to the sun, and it's all communicating. But where do you think, like when you saw the Crystal City, you were struck by lightning. How many times were you struck by lightning?
Twice. I didn't get it the first time. So, they had to kill me again. I got struck by lightning sitting in the bedroom, holding the phone, talking on it, on the edge of the bed the first time, dead for 28 minutes, completely paralyzed for 6 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. And then when I discovered, David, as you know, when I discovered that we are spiritual beings and how all this really works, and the panoramic life review, and how reality in this dimensional works. Okay, when I discovered that, I rebelled against it. I was 25 years old. I was Superman. I was a tough guy, all those things. And all of a sudden I was a helpless cripple. And I had time to really focus and look at the spiritual nature of how we operate. So I was resenting the fact, this is the truth. When I looked at religions and institutions and governments, and they're all liars,
Mm-hmm.
and they are perpetuating a controlled lie. Okay. And there's this thing called death. And so much is ascribed to it and structured around it as fear, that it is the ultimate control mechanism on humanity.
Absolutely.
And the fact that when you're born, you come here with the two things that you never, as a spiritual being, ever not have. The fact that you're alone and that you're helpless. A simple bacteria can kill you. A simple cut, until the invention of penicillin in 1929, you would die from the infection. Okay, so with those things and coming into this existence, I resented it.
Right.
People are liars. And there's no place where the spiritual place has a viable existence. And so 3 years later, they got me again. That's so.
Was that lightning the second time?
Yeah, talking on the phone, sitting in the same place in a different house. I never went back in the room where the lightning struck me in the first place. I slept when they took.
No, that's interesting that it was the phone, because I mean I grew up in the
on my left side.
It was the left side.
Left side, always like this. I mean,
it's
the divine's way. It's the divine's way of. I look at it, David, as a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because my personal relationship with the divine nature, as I know it after being dead 4 times, is that as I look at it and think about that, then it's always how entertaining it is. That my relationship and awareness of the divine is entertaining. I mean, I live in utter amazement to watch the beauty of the synchronicity of how the energetic frequencies flow and how you can move into levels of consciousness by simple techniques and understanding the difference in the frequency modulation and operation of this thing you call a body, which is electrical. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not physical. No matter what anybody thinks, it's an electrical system.
Absolutely. I've been talking about this in my inner circle lately. And also, based on your height of your skeleton, I can calculate your personal electromagnetic frequency that you attenuate at. And I know you're much taller than me. I'm 6 feet and a half an inch. And you're
6'3", almost 6'4".
And were you tall early in life as a kid?
No, I grew 9 inches and gained 70 pounds from the summer of before the 8th grade, after the 7th grade, to my first year in 10th grade. And then from 28 to 31, I grew another inch.
Right. And yeah, that last little stretch, which is really remarkable. I was 4'11" in grade 8. I wasn't even 5 feet. And I grew suddenly later. But I hear, what I sense from you is your fearlessness. And, you died 4 times and they couldn't kill you, 1. And 2, the light is alive all the time. And you are the light, which is always alive. There is no death in God. It's just life.
No, it's a big delusion. Nobody dies. It's the stupidest thing. If you are a spiritual being, right? Let's look at a Christian point of view or a Judo-Christian heritage. If you are a spiritual being, the Holy Ghost, if you are a spiritual being, how in the heck can you kill you? That's
exactly.
Insane.
But see, you have that affirmed in your being. I've had my experiences that affirm it. I've been meditating every day for 45 years. So there's affirmation, so that you can almost laugh at life, laugh at the fear mechanisms that they try to impose on us.
That they're doing it today, David.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, that's why I like the way Trump just laughed at this virus. And, he doesn't want us being afraid of a freaking virus.
With a 99.6% survival rate. 99.6%.
Right.
You get in your car every day. Don't do this. I can take it. I mean, 1.5 million people died of tuberculosis last year.
Right.
And tuberculosis is air transmitted. This is all nuts.
It's all
I'm
nuts.
sorry.
No, I know you don't have to be sorry. I'm right with you. In our region where we moved to in British Columbia, this province with 5 million people, we've lost 1,500 to suicide and 300 and something to supposedly COVID, and pneumonia kills 2.5 to 3 million people a year. I mean,
so it's all a scam. But that's what my big issue is, David. Fear.
fear.
Okay. But the next thing that comes into play about our relationship, the relationship you and me, I've always trusted you and watched you, and I've appreciated who you are and what I know that we are energetic beings. And I know you can reduce it down to frequencies, but you have to also maintain the chemical nature of this body. You cannot reduce it simply to the frequencies,
Right.
because the body is programmed to react to itself. And it is an entity whole up unto itself. So no matter how many frequencies, you need to take your trace minerals every day. You need to get liquid trace minerals. Everybody needs to take their trace minerals. Every illness that you have can be reduced down to a lack of a certain trace mineral and dehydration. End of story.
Absolutely.
That's the physical body.
You need conductive minerals and semiconductive crystals, your salts, potassium and sodium and
electrolytes.
Your electrolytes, yeah.
You put your electrolytes into position and you put your trace minerals in position. Then you give that body the chemically nature of what it needs when the energetic force moves from the spiritual place to the ethereal place to the energetic place into the chemical place, which is how it does it.
Right.
Okay. So once it enters the chemical place, then it's found harmony and homeostasis in the course of balancing and correcting itself.
Right.
So if you people were using your products, and which I am a big supporter of, I commend you on the work that you've done, the bed and frequency harmonic alignment. I've always came up with this nature after the first near-death experience about how you energetically balance bodies. And so I've created a program in home health care and end-of-life care that uses an energetic sound system so that I can harmonize certain frequencies to help people transition from this world to the next, using the true reality of what we're doing.
That's so beautiful. I just love you for that. That's what I feel with. I know there are certain people dying of different viruses on the planet right now, and they put a lot of fear on this particular virus as a control.
If it is a virus.
What's that?
If it is a virus.
If it is a virus, yeah. But the point is, you've got, like, look at the statistics in America. You've got about 70 million people who are at the age where they can die at any time anyway. I mean, you can die at any time anyway.
Baby boomers.
Right. But so that
means between 1940 and 1967.
Right. And what I found, I was born in 1961 in Alberta, Canada, and my dad there was 4 of us, my mom and dad. We moved to Berkeley in about 1965. I think we were all there. And then we grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I remember those lightning storms in the Bay Area. I remember when the lightning went sideways down the street.
There's 3 kinds of lightning. Most people think there's one kind. There's 3 kinds.
Okay, what are they?
Okay, you have lightning that has to do with atmospheric conditions, hot and cold. Then you have lightning that moves sideways. But if you have a telephone system that's grounding, that lightning, that grounding system will not affect that lightning. That lightning can come down that phone no matter what you appear to be.
The sideways lightning.
And then you have ball fire lightning, which is a ball of fire that comes. And each of these are different levels of atmospheric pressure, atmospheric ionization, temperature, because of how nature and the atmosphere operates electrically is in play.
So you were hit by the sideways ones that went through the...
I saw them. I was hit by the straight down and then the ball of fire. It burnt my eyes. You know, I wore welder's glasses for like 2 years because it burnt my eyes. The thing that was so amazing about being dead, David, was I was blind, paralyzed, in pain, and couldn't move. And I lifted out of my body and I could see, I was comfortable. I was okay where I was. I was happy about it. And I was looking at my body and acclimating into who I really am and truly am, as opposed to who I thought I was in that body. So all this conversation we just had was about me getting struck again for not paying attention and keep doing the work I think I'm supposed to be doing, as opposed to getting mad at people for being so stupid.
But you must be super conductive to be able to handle all that lightning as Moses was holding his staff. And I think, have you ever, because you and I we've talked about Tesla in person. I was director of the Los Angeles Tesla Foundation for years, and I spoke in the United States Congress on nuclear fusion under that. But you are lightning man to me. So have you ever been hit by a Tesla coil spark, and does it do anything to you? Have you ever tried that?
I've seen Tesla coils, and I've seen rotors coils. I mean, I'm a big quantum electrics guy. So I like what you're doing. So
on the other side of this wall is a massive coil whose circumference is equal to the width of the Queen's chamber and the King's chamber.
Like it should be.
Which is the radius of the Holy of Holies times 28 points is the exact height of the Great Pyramid. And actually, this is a little experimental handheld coil. This wire is exactly 480.69 feet, the height of the finished Pyramid of Egypt. And there's something...
And who wound that?
Oh, I did. I do. I make a lot of my coils. Like we have these new ones here that will plug right into your phone, and you put it on a pillow behind your head. And a couple of weeks ago, I had this experience where I thought I was having a brain stroke because I was seeing all these filaments of light that were flickering, and I couldn't read the text messages on my phone. So I did jumping jacks and push-ups and yoga, and it wasn't going away. And I put this coil on the top of my head, and I ran two pyramid frequencies. And in 1 minute, the symptoms were all gone, and it never came back.
What do you think the symptoms were? I mean,
well, I looked up online, and it's not stroke. It doesn't look like a sign of stroke. But there's a lot of possibilities what it could be. There was a feeling in the top of the brain, in the crown chakra, that physically felt like circulation was getting cut off. And I just put that coil, and it's very weak. When you plug it into your phone, the amplifier in an iPhone 10 is not like that one's plugged into an actual stereo amp right now. So my coils are all plugged into stereo amps. And actually, we've had this happen to several people where I believe someone else on the planet was running one of my coils counterclockwise, and this kid is playing with his toys, and one of his toys just disappears. And the parents never, ever found it again. And I think it went through a hole because we've had this happen several times.
I can believe that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any problems about dimensional reality, David.
Oh, yeah.
In the course of my adventures into the other realms of reality, dimensional reality is a common thought pattern for me. The fact that you could create transitional portals,
right?
I mean, it is
to move
easy.
Around the planet, like all of the pyramids could have been in a matrix to physically move persons from one place on the planet to another, instantaneously, whereas we use small crystal transistors as amplifiers to amplify and send, and crystal oscillators, which are also made of quartz crystal. To the whole world is running on quartz crystals right now, and that kind of brings me to the crystal city you saw. When we look at the Book of Enoch, we see what is described as a crystal spacecraft. It doesn't say spacecraft, or a crystal temple that came on the ground, and there was God shining brighter than 1,000 suns, and Archangel Michael and Gabriel at his side, and Enoch falls upon his face. He's taken into this crystal temple, and he leaves the planet. Like, when you saw this crystal city, can you describe it? Did you see it briefly, or?
No, once I had the panoramic life review, this being was with me. It was like everybody has somebody that meets them. I mean, it's like a duty. You know, and a lot of times when people are in transition, you know, I've been with 2010 people going from this world to the next world, and 348 taking their last breath. And I have 34,000 hours at the bedside
Wow,
as a
wow,
hospice volunteer. So
wow.
there's nothing about death I don't know. And I've been dead myself. The issue is people said the other day, said, Dannion, this is pretty amazing. You've been dead 4 times. I said, yeah, but not nearly as amazing as I've been alive 5. Okay, so,
Right,
so
and
I
then
got that part figured out. So when I got through the end of the Panoramic Life Review, and we moved, and I always describe it like it was Denver. If you're driving into Denver at night, David, you see all the little houses on the side of the mountain, and their lights are on. Well,
right.
these were multiple crystal cities. So what I thought was, well, okay, we don't all come from the same crystal city. You know, this is what.
Oh,
my
there
thought
was multiple crystal cities.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I could see them, and they were all like on the side of a mountain. But the one I went to, this being, this being either merged with me or disappeared. And when I went into the crystal city, it was like boxes that looked like they were made of plexiglass. I could see the shape of it, and my mind had to create that image. But inside of it had a nuclei. The most important part was this golden mead, this rectangle block of a perfect proportion, and this light emanating of it, and it made this crystal city. And then I remember the Lancet Arch, okay? And the Lancet Arch, when I was looking at trying to figure out how it was structured, I could see Lancet Arches, and a Lancet Arch is how you can put an enormous amount of weight on the top of a point, and it distributes itself downward.
Right.
Okay, so I saw that as the grounding. This is me dead, but I saw that as the grounding mechanism. And then it had a quiet kind of sound to it. You know, stillness and silence, but a quiet sound to it. And then these 12 beings appeared, and then a 13th being appeared to the upper right-hand side as if it was the controller. So once that entered that phase of the near-death experience, I forgot about the crystal city. It was no longer important. It had to represent where I came from or where I had come to learn and what I needed to see next. Okay, and so it's very organized to me, David. I don't have all that woo-woo about me. You know, I always say I've been in the Swami business for like 30 years, but I don't have that about me. I'm very straightforward and very honest about reality and who we are as spiritual beings. And understanding that the most important thing that anybody I'm talking to can understand is this life is a reward. You were chosen because nobody believes there's anybody greater than you to be born at the exact moment and exact situation you found yourself so you could work through it. And that you chose to come because you want to create ways at which you grow. Okay? Mm-hmm. And what is the meaning of life? If you sit down and write down on a piece of paper everything you think and hope God is or the divine is, caring, loving, compassionate, protective, understanding. And then you look at how many times per day that you have an opportunity to be everything you wrote on that list. So the meaning of life is practicing being a God. To come to have the right to practice being a God is a privilege. It means you would have to have achieved something in levels of consciousness to have a right to come scared and helpless, alone, and in a physical body that makes you appear that you are only it.
I know, I get that 100%. Like when I meditate now, there's so much bliss and ecstasy of God. But when I pray to God, I include my entire awareness as God. That glory be to God in the highest is not some being out there. It's infinite, including the space that I occupy in my awareness.
No, I use reattachment. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have to live in this world, and I have to make a living, and I have to do things, right. And I have to do my part in changing the world, because saving the world can be a profession. And I deal in palliative and end-of-life care, and I deal in death. It's where I come from. It's what I deal with. It's what I focus on, and it's what I study. And I have been doing it for 42 years. And I have 37 years in the VA dying with veterans. So I got a grip on palliative and end of life care. My job is to get people home. And COVID came as a blessing, but my job is to be able to take people home, to get them out of the hospital, get them out of nurses' homes, and create programs so that they can come home and not drive the family crazy and be able to have that kind of closure and structure in their life. This is my goal, and this is what I do every single day of my life.
Wow, I didn't
And I
know.
work on it. This is what I'm going to achieve. It's what I believe I was set back to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So when a person starts to look at that, this is a reward, their energetic pattern changes. And when they start to look at death as something that is impossible to happen, okay, that means if it's impossible to happen, and I'm telling you, it's impossible, nobody dies. No matter what you think, no matter who tells you that you do, that is utter, absolute nonsense. You do not die. Forget it. Okay, well, when you take that fear away, that is an illusion, then you become responsible. There is nobody going to save you from you. There is nobody capable of saving you from yourself except you. Okay, end of story. The universe is fair and just.
Dannion, as you're speaking right now, I feel like the whole world that's gripped by this COVID fear needs to hear this right now from you.
It's nonsense. You cannot be afraid of
can't
divinity. And people don't look outside. When it's time, like what you were doing about meditating, David, I do the same. I just reconnect.
Right.
I have to live outside in this world, but I already been where I really am and who I really am. Okay. And it's embarrassing to be such a prick in this dimension compared to that. I'm really pretty cool. But this is the nature that I developed to be able to do what I think is my goals. Like each and every one of us are doing the same thing. But the fear of death, the unknown, fear of death, the unknown, that you don't know what's next, and then this thing called sin, heaven and hell. Those things undermine the fact also that you're being abandoned, and also what you watch that person go through in the process of death, knowing that it's time for them to leave, but that we understand the chemistry of the physical body. We can keep you alive longer than your time was to stay here. And the agony of that synergizes into a concept that is being controlled and manipulating us as a world people. This is where
how did that happen? How did we go from God, who let Adam and Eve be naked in paradise and not judge their nudity, not judge anything? There's no judgment. And then we came into this concept of well, they took in good and evil, which is judgment, which is fatal. And they spun into a good and evil battle because they believed in judgment. But how did we go from this divinity and this perfect nudity to sin and guilt and shame? And then that's how they controlled us, by that concept. Was that Christianity? Was it Jesus, or was it a fabrication of him?
Well, it wasn't Jesus. Jesus, I mean, when I look at the Jesus story, you go from the Old Testament to a vengeful God and all that stuff. And then you come to this point, love thy neighbor as thyself, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Okay, anybody who's ever had a panoramic life review, which is what everybody has and everybody talks about in the near-death experience, that is an absolute truth, because you will see your life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. You will watch it from a second-person point of view as if you were your own best friend. And then you will literally become every person that you ever encounter, and you will feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person. So nobody gets away with anything.
Pure empathy. We're all connected and feeling each other.
Well, but it's the system.
Right.
So if you're here practicing being a God and you're going to be everybody you ever encountered, then sin or scared or whatever else it is in how you interacted with people becomes another control mechanism, okay? Because this is how it works. This is the way coming here and leaving here works. And I know it backwards. I know it backwards and forward. I've spent years in enormous pain, David, and I use frequencies to hold and manage this pain more than I use chemistry to use it, because it's electrical pain. It's not chemical pain.
Right. You have electrical pain from
Yeah,
those.
I mean nerve, God, you can't fry somebody and then live 45 years, okay, and go through open heart surgery, brain surgery, open heart surgery, all from damage done by the lightning. When they opened me up 2 years ago, they nobody would do the surgery, and then they opened me up 2 years ago, and the doctor said there was so, and I thank her. The doctor said there was so much scar tissue inside of me that it was unbelievable that I was still
Unbelievable that
alive.
you're still alive.
Well, they told Catherine, my wife, and they told my brother and sister that I wouldn't make it 10 days. And I only made it 5 days before I went into cardiac arrest and was resuscitated twice. They broke 2 ribs, put the pads on me, cracked 2 ribs, and had to resuscitate me. But for me, it's all about looking at the quote unquote near death experience, because I was watching, and this is the thing that amazed me, David. Watch. I'm like 68 years old, and I think I know everything about death and dying and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so when on a Sunday morning at 2 a.m., 5 days after I had open heart surgery, and was dead when they brought me from the operating room into the intensive care, I was dead. There was a doctor, there was a nurse who had just pulled a 12-hour shift, and he said something stopped him and told him that this man should live. And he stayed 2 hours. He did a 14-hour shift after 12 hours and got my blood pressure to like 46 over 28 or something like that. And so I came out of it, but it was tough. But when 5 days later, 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard the bell go off. Okay. And then everything was intense. And then all of a sudden, I'm standing next to my body. I'm standing next to my body with the nurse on my right side, watching them bang on my chest, watching the alarms go off, watching the nurses and the doctor and everybody doing the best job they could to save my life. I'm watching that, but I came out really fast. Okay. But when I went back in again, it was slow, and it was like I was cloaking. It was like, in order to be a physical being, you have to cloak. And I know these are energetic patterns. Okay. But cloaking is the best term, because between every dimension is 7 or 8 densities. There's a 7 or 8 densities before you transition through a dimension. And so what I was having to do was reacclimate these dimensional bodies in order to be.
That's just incredible right there to see that. I skydived from 30,000 feet and trained at Edwards Air Force Base. And as you go up, even through the different layers of Earth's atmosphere, the pressure that's holding our skin together, our face together, we're underwater right now, actually.
Exactly.
And when you come in at 300 miles an hour in free fall, high altitude, and you hit the lower atmosphere, it's like jumping into a lake. My oxygen mask is shaking, and you feel the density.
Barometric pressure.
And I know in reading Zecharia Sitchin's books, these descriptions of Ishtar and the goddesses coming in their ships, they had to wear all these amulets, all these pendants and they had these rings to calibrate their body to come in to this super dense place.
But if you notice, in all Egypt, in all of Mesopotamia, Babylon, all of them carried a purse.
Yeah,
if you look at all the carvings,
purse.
They all carry that little
what
purse.
What was in that purse?
Well, but what you're talking about is, how did you harmonize if you're an energetic being, okay, but you still have physical density based on protons, neutrons, neutrinos,
right?
Okay, or
and did you know the strange quark, which is the strange quark is either in the neutron or the proton. The neutron has more mass than the proton, but the strange quarks in us are leaving and coming back all the time, and they're heavy. There's a lot of mass in quarks.
Well, it depends on the definition of mass.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's not really mass. It's if it's leaving, and physicists are really evolving in their theories on very light levels of mass. But
David, you can only measure that in a constant. When you start talking about mass, quote unquote, which is a ridiculous concept too, But when you talk about mass is the consistency of it being a constant. How long can you measure it? Okay,
Right.
that's what's going to determine the idea that mass exists in reality. Okay,
Right.
so, but to get back to what we're talking about,
Hmm.
when I was watching myself come out, I realized that we put on these bodies to be able to see ourselves as physical. Okay, so it's not like we're being deceived or we're under some delusional, you thinking it's psychosomatic, or you think you were a victim, all that kind of stuff. Each of these layered bodies reinforce me to understand that, it's not all my fault. There is a mechanism that I have to overcome or work through. Okay, so then they brought me back. It took about 6 or 7 minutes the first time. I stayed about 5 minutes. They all cleaned up. They were all moving out and all going back about their duties, maybe 6 minutes. And then I flatlined again. Okay, this is 2 years ago. I flatlined again. I came right back to the same place where I was, fast as lightning, very calm, and I'm watching me. And I think that was that time when I had to decide to stay or go. Okay, because I knew what the next 2 or 3 years was going to be like.
At that point where you're at right there, how many of these densities of the 7 or 8 did you let go of?
Well, the system automatically let go of all of them.
All of them?
Yeah. I mean, see, I always say 7 or 8 because there is a hypnagogic state. There's a dawn and a dusk. Everything appears to be exact, but you got to remember there is a beginning and an end, and between every word there is a space. So when you look at between every breath you take, you breathe in, then you stop, and then you breathe out. Nothing spiritually happens in this physical dimension until you hold your breath. Why you teach meditation, learn how to control your breath and all that, that's your keys to reconnect to the divine. You don't pray to anything. You turn inward and reconnect to the divine flow that moves through you. You can do it electronically, you can do it with frequencies, but you have to be consistent in the constant, and you have to do it with ceremony and the highest intent of all things. And you can never use I or me. You have to always use we and us as the nature of why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, because be inclusive so the divinity can collectively draw those who are close to being in the flow while you are getting in the flow.
Right. So I see exactly what you're saying. I mean, sometimes I've tried to identify, after you have an spontaneous out of body experience, what is holding us so tightly in these things. And, you can't get out. And yet what happened to you, you got out fully physically because of an actual near-death experience. Whereas in my experience, when I went through the 7 levels of heaven, it happened spontaneously in 1986, December 22nd and 23rd, 2 days in a row. But I didn't get hit by lightning. I was shaking. It was like a Kundalini thing. I thought I was crumbling. But the point is, we're locked in these things. And the Buddha says the suffering is caused by the over intensive identification with this thing, and that we over identify with it and we're too attached to it, and we can't identify in our consciousness the light. It is here all the time. I mean, I feel it now when I do my practice. There's so much light and ecstasy right here, right now. There's really no reason to go anywhere else. But do you see, here's a really good question. When you think of the light and you think of heaven, what is the mechanism to bring it all the way down so that what we manifest here really works in the highest principles that are represented in the light?
The question: love thy neighbor as thyself, and do unto others as
But
others
we
would do
won't
unto
do that.
you, and practice being a God.
You're right.
Practice
It
being a
makes
God.
so much sense, but yet we won't do that.
Because we fool ourselves, David, into rationalizing that we're taking care of ourselves. Okay.
Right.
Everybody does things. That thing that you see in the mirror is not you. It's a happy compilation of everything you hope somebody's going to like about you. okay? And while you do it, that is not you in the mirror, okay? So what happens is we identify with I and me, all right?
Right.
Instead of us and we, okay? Because then it doesn't become like dialectic materialism or communism or the collective that we, like the Borg, you will be assimilated. It becomes a consciousness that moves action forward. Everybody's making a difference. Every person is making a difference. You come here to breathe X amount of breaths. The breath you breathe in and the breath you breathe out is the measure of your time here, okay? So when I went through this last time, I always tell people, never want to know everything. Never want to know everything. Just want to know what you're supposed to know that helps you make a difference in your choices you make in your life and in the lives of those who you love and care about. Okay, because when you get a grip on the magnificence of the divinity of this universe, when
do you
get
think
the magnificence of it?
I see all this obsession on the internet with what the cabal and the dark forces are doing, and everybody's watching every move of what's going on with the dark forces on the planet and how we're going to overturn them. But do you feel that if every person had this ability and the tools to access the light right here, right now, that none of those things would even matter? And our fast.
I believe that corruption. If I have to look at American corruption, I think it would have started in 1871. Okay, and I believe that that would be the measure of the end product of what we're watching now from a geopolitical nature. We are watching now the collapsing or the survival of that system. But that system is built up in greed and tyrannies and war and the deep state, cabal, all that control, depopulation, all that stuff. Remember, I wrote Saved by the Light 25 years ago and told about the boxes of knowledge, the vision I received in 1975. Everybody knows this story. I describe in chapter 5, box 12, exactly what's happening today.
Right now.
Exactly.
And then your 13th vision, you said there was no box shaped like a video cassette. That was World War III. Was that a potential World War III, or was that a World War?
We're right there now.
You think we're
right there now?
Box 13 now, between 12 and 13 right now?
Oh yeah, this is box 12 right now.
So 13 is 13 going to happen, or is it a potential?
It's happening. Everything is a probable possibility based on each of us breathing. So
it knows probability because of what we're doing, but that doesn't mean it's fixed, but it's highly probable is what you're saying.
Well, you have probable possibilities in an action. It's always based on intention, David. It's never what you do, it's why you do it. Because it is your intention that drives the manifestation of what we think is reality. What is the intent? Okay.
You know, I had this experience with a frequency, using a frequency box and tuning a very specific frequency of a temple. I measure the frequencies of the Holy of Holies. When you mentioned the rectangular box in the Crystal City, it kind of reminds me of the King's Chamber. And the King's Chamber measurement is the same as the original Tabernacle of Moses, where they had the rectangular, which is the holy place, and the Holy of Holies is the cube in the back. It's the same measure, 10 by 20.
And perfect pitch. And it has perfect pitch.
And it's perfect.
I spent many a day in the King's Chamber.
I calculate all those electromagnetic frequencies, but I realize that consciousness interacting with frequency is way more powerful than the frequency by itself. So one day
consciousness is about the intention.
Right.
What is the purpose of why this is happening? Light attracts and it's hard for people to realize that you can break it all the way down to zeros and ones, the basic, other than Java, the basic computer language. You're either attracting it or you're repelling it. You're either magnetic, you're either attracting it to you or you're repelling it.
Right.
Okay, so which one are you doing is based on your intention. You have a proton, you have a positive, a negative, and a neutral. Okay, in electrical, proton, neutron. Okay, and electron. Well, the neutral is free will. And how you accentuate based on the choices you have into doing it the right way or not the right way, or rationalize how you can get away with it and think your intention is true, is where humanity traps itself.
Mhm.
And then we have constructed a punishment system called death. And what comes after that is a punishment structured system that everybody thinks they're going to go to hell. Okay, well,
Right.
I can tell everybody, if I didn't go to hell, nobody's going to hell. And
Right.
I've been over there 4 times and I've never been to hell yet.
Right.
So that whole concept loses its
Yeah. So
fragrance.
what did they tell you? Like when you described yourself as a bully kid when you were young and you did all these bad things, and they showed you that they showed you no punishment for that.
No, it was to observe the truth.
Right.
What were you thinking? I
But
got away with stuff that I thought that I would be completely destroyed, but it was the intention of why I did it. If I was protecting something else that was, and I was acting off of that, then what I did was just an observation where there were simple little tiny things that I did as being a prick, that I hurt people. And it was intentional, and I know it was intentional, and I had to be that person. Think about when you have to be every person that you've ever encountered, and I'll use the term Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler's got to be 6 million Jews.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about when you got to be every person that you've ever encountered, or your intention happens to be work like that, then that's the reason why you do right. That's the reason why you stay straight and stay in integrity, and you do things for certain reasons. That's the reason why, because practicing being a God as a reality, to me, is an exalted gift given to me as a truth.
So if you are those 6 million Jews, then you can't do that, because you're going to feel exactly what they're going to feel.
That's why I chose to become a hospice volunteer.
Right.
I'm gonna be everybody I ever encountered, and I'm gonna feel the direct results of my interaction. When that person whose hand I'm holding looks up into my eyes, then I know when I go through the next panoramic life review, I will see them looking up into a divine focus in a place that's there to celebrate their life. And I have a technique, the Twilight Brigade. I know how to create and structure closure and give your life a value. I know the techniques to do it, developed over 42 years as a hospice volunteer.
Right.
I've been with 2,010 people, David, 348 taking their last breath. And for the last 45 years, I studied death and everything about it. And I have been back and forth across that veil on a regular basis, not by choice, but I can move through. To my left, I can move 3, maybe 2 dimensions instantly. And to my right side, I can move 4. I can move dimensionally and look at it from a dimensional perspective. I have to center myself, focus my breath, set up a structure, but I can move. So I don't have any problems about the reality of how powerful and great we are as spiritual beings in human form.
Can you feel people from the other side in
Sure.
the here and now?
Easy.
Right.
Everybody has to come to the book of judgment, or what I call the blue-gray place.
Right.
Everybody, in order, if let's say you wanted to contact somebody, that was your mom, your dad. Okay, well, once you go through the panoramic life review, that mom and dad story business is over.
Oh yeah, no, I've been able to have experiences with my mom who passed 2 years ago approximately.
But what she would have had to have done, she would have had to come back to the record and reassemble the identity of mom. She's a spiritual being. This is a job.
Right.
Okay, and you come to practice being gods, and everybody who ever loved their mother know their mother spent their life practicing being a god.
Right.
Okay, to you individually with
Oh
everything
yeah, absolutely. Your parents, as a child, a child sees their parent as God. Absolutely, they're the ones.
Well, I had the greatest 2 parents that ever breathed air. And my heart goes out to everybody who didn't have the kind of parents I had. I mean, mine were magnificent.
Wonderful.
Okay, and that starts the game. That starts the controlling game. That's how it comes into play. But to have the right to breathe air, and to know that I'm making the difference with my thoughts. My thoughts are positive, and that I want people to find the kind of happiness that I have in what I do, and the joy that I get in knowing that I've earned the right to practice being a God. So I look at how can I be nice to people. I look at how, but this thing I was saying, when I see that veteran look up at me, David, and I see the security and the safety and that they're not alone, and that they can feel that I'm not afraid and I don't want anything, and there is nothing you can give me back because you're going home. So I do it with a complete spiritual abandonment that there's no reward for me. Okay. And I hold that person and let them pass. They always say in the Bible, where two or more gather in my name, so shall I be among you. Well, if you knew what I knew and you were at a bedside, you can travel back home. You can, at that moment that that being lets go, you can catch the trail of that energy. You catch the trail of that energy and expand in the
Oh yeah,
euphoria of one
take
being
you
set
right
free.
there. You're riding the magnetic wave. Are there?
Exactly.
Do we live on the other planets in our solar system in spiritual form?
Uh, it would have to be, I cannot answer that in general as a yes.
Mm-hmm.
But do we occupy other dimensions at the same time? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we are quantum dynamic beings. I mean, this is a job and we're focused here, but we have other things that we do at other levels of consciousness. You know, quantum mechanics and the multi-universe theory, especially Deutsch playing off of Plancké's theory. Deutsch says there's between 11 and 17 simultaneous universes that we're operating in. Well, I can't say that that's factual, okay, because I know of maybe 4,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a knowledge of another 3, but I don't enter them. You know, I'm just aware of their existence. I cannot refine my energy, probably because of my heart, and, you know, I won't make excuses, but I cannot refine my energy to access those levels. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I cannot tune it. I cannot tune it to that level.
But maybe
But I
when
know
you
they
let go of
exist.
this
So
organism,
in answer to your question, I can say maybe. But I know we're occupying multi dimensions. When somebody told me that and I looked it up, David, I started laughing. I said, well, damn. No wonder I'm so tired when I wake up every morning. If I'm having half as much fun over in those 11 other dimensions as I'm having in this one, no wonder I'm tired.
oh yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's going to be an event where what the Bible predicts, like a second coming, a grand arrival of the gods and goddesses on Earth for a recalibration of Earth, or do you think we just have to keep figuring this out on our own?
Yeah, I don't aspire to that. I
Right.
mean, you know, I'm not, everybody's got a second coming. Well, if he's got to come the second time, we failed him. If you look at the
Right.
reason they got to come, like the Great
But
Madrid.
don't you think also that puts a lack of responsibility on the here and now, to the idea of thinking, well, someone's going to come and clean all this up, so I don't really have to do anything.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Panoramic Life Review proves that that's not right.
Right.
And everybody who's had a decent near-death experience knows the Panoramic Life Review story. Okay,
Right.
so that's not right. And I would rather be, David, I would rather be responsible for my actions, because
Right now.
I know you're going to be responsible for your actions anyway.
Right.
Okay, I know that's going to happen. So I don't need to go through all of that. Somebody, we are right now, where the world is right now, is at the tipping point. This is the most critical, like I said, in American history since around 1871. And then 1898, then the crash of 29, and then 1933 when Social Security came into play.
Mhm.
Woodrow Wilson and the United Nations equal to the League of Nations, that, and Wilson sold out. These were critical junctures. And we are right now experiencing one of those political and historic events. The system is showing itself because it must control and depopulate. And it must come up with a way that terrifies us to the point that we give up those rights in order for a sense of safety. And they're playing that hand. Now, whether those are multidimensional beings, like some people say, and androchrome and blood drinkers and all of that, I know that I know that uh, that there are things that are going on that are more evil than you want to try to believe, and everybody is compromised. You compromise people in certain ways, okay, and in that
Well, that evil
compromising,
is
you against your own will have to do things to keep from being exposed because you let yourself be compromised. Well, I believe that Donald Trump is going to bring the playhouse down. I think I just laugh. I think that he is going to expose this system that
he's
is
doing it right now. He's exposing the voter fraud. He's exposing, which is the end of real democracy, a lack of respect for what a democracy is.
And well, I think pedophilia and child trafficking is more important to me than that.
Oh yeah, me too, Dan. I mean, I'm all over this issue.
I draw the line there.
Right.
I draw the line right there.
The children need to have
child abuse and
right.
all that stuff. I mean, all that rest of that stuff is just political corruption. Okay, I can handle that, but I draw the line there. You know, there is that place to damage that child and that spiritual being at a young age that never allows them to vibratorily harmonize into the divine, because it is someone that they looked up to or loved that is doing this or manipulating them. I mean, I draw the line there, and
or the failure of families, like the very fact that you have 200,000 American children entering foster carelessness every year, and thousands of those kids go missing every year.
We mean thousands. 800,000 children disappear in America per year, and most of them come out of social services in the United States.
And that's where they go through the Rolodexes and pick out the kids they want for their sex farms or whatever they're doing. And yeah, that's the biggest issue to me right now.
I draw the line there. I mean, that's it.
It's happening. Those are American children born. I was raised in America when it was pure, when you could play with the kid down the street and your mom and dad didn't know where you were all day and nobody was going to mess with you.
Until you heard them whistle, and then you better be home at that moment.
The night we played in Modesto, California, we played Light as a Feather, where all the kids use their fingertips and raise you up into the sky.
Sure.
And, you know, you're in love with the girl down. I was in love with the girl down the street, and it's midnight, and your parents don't care where you are. Now today,
no, you know, don't get into trouble. Here's what my dad was. My dad always said, "Listen, don't let your mother find out." He said, "Listen, got one rule: don't let your mother find out." He said, "You got to know." He said, "Growing up in America is not illegal, but some parts of it is." So,
the kids had more fun than anybody, climbing out the windows, climbing in the windows in the middle of the night.
Oh, and I was in love with every girl. I was in love with every girl in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
but that's gone.
It's gone. It's gone.
And the only thing that's going to return that is the system imploding.
And we lost our girls. I hate to say this, but I know these girls personally, Dannion. The oil money that we sent to the Middle East allowed them to buy our real estate, and they started scouring the modeling agencies. I saw this with my own eyes. I was in Saudi Arabia on 9/11. I got there the night before the towers came down. And I was in palaces. I was there as a U.S. defense contractor. We finished our defense contract for very sophisticated bomb detection equipment. And we were looking for money from the Saudis. So the second to the king picked me up at the airport. These palaces are 1.5 miles by 1.5 miles. And you know what they have in there? All the princes, all the kings have tons of beds surrounding their bed. And they use the modeling agencies of Europe and America, and they pick out women, and they pay these women $300,000 to come over there and play with them. Thousands and thousands of our girls. When these girls came back to America, I met many of them in LA, and they hated themselves so much they OD'd on drugs. We lost thousands and thousands. Playboy magazine could not compete with this industry because of how much they were getting paid. These girls told me how much they got paid. And so I see
Selling your soul. And the younger,
the young men, the young boys of America were losing their girls to these monsters. And this was in massive numbers. This was not small numbers. And I've told some of these girls today, you need to tell your story. But Trump knows this. He was in the modeling industry. He saw all of it, which is why he wants to bring energy home, why he wants to drill on American soil so that Americans can be wealthy again, and these people can't come here and steal anything they want, and which our children who grow up to be women are the parents' pride and joy. And these girls grow up, and this is a mass epidemic right now. It's almost painful to see this, that every girl is selling themselves on their webcam as an industry because there's no freaking jobs for these kids when they get out of high school. When I grew up as a kid, my mom divorced in the 60s in Berkeley and married a Texan, David Cooper, and she had another child with him, my stepbrother, Stefan. And houses were $20,000. You could work. He worked as a photo clerk at Thrifty's drugstore while he was going to school and put all of us in a house, 5 boys. And my mom was a clothing designer and an artist. And we had a great life. Today, if you work at Thrifty's drugstore, you are not having a family. And I'm having my kids so late in life because I worked my butt off when I was young in construction. I worked in the mountains as a tree planter. I planted 1.5 million trees in 23 years. They paid me nothing. They paid me nothing for that. I couldn't raise a family. I could barely raise myself. So all these beautiful young women that were attracted to me in those days said, David, you don't even have an apartment that is your own. I mean, how can I be with you? And this is what we did. We deconstructed the economy to the point that, like, look at the baby replacement rate in America and Canada today, and they're way below standard.
Less than 1.2.
Right.
In order to sustain growth, in order to sustain growth, you have to have 2.3.
And so we're at 1.2, you know the number, and we're still losing hundreds of thousands of kids to foster care. You know why? Those freaking families can't raise their kids because there's no support. They're working their tails off, and they
2 or 3 jobs.
2 or 3 jobs. And that should have been the issue on the presidential debate, because America's families are breaking at the seams. And
that's controlled, David. That's a controlled.
But that is
a design. This is how you submit. This is the way you get people to submit. Come on. If it's too synergized. It's too synergized what's happening.
But that's what breaks my heart, Dannion. The fun you had, you're like 10 years older than me or 9 years older than me, I forget, but the fun we had as kids, they'll never have again.
No.
They're not going to know what it's like to play hide and go seek at midnight when you're 12 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're worried your kid's going to be trafficked and picked up in a van by a bunch of scoundrels, and you'll never see them again.
Yeah, and they made $30,000 doing it.
They made $30,000. That's why they do it. You see these videos on YouTube, the mom's nursing her kid, a white van pulls up. She's got to beat these other guys off who are trying to steal her other kid. And that's like, then you have to become an overprotective parent. Your kid was saying, I want to have fun, Dad. I want to run around.
Being stifled.
I know.
You got to look at it. What it does is it reinforces the fact that what we hope is not true really is true, David. That this child trafficking and this adrenochrome, I have such a hard time believing it, except that I know that it's true.
Oh, yeah, they're that sick. They don't know how to get high, these people. So they want to suck the adrenal gland out of a child's kidneys, adrenal glands above the kidneys, so they can get their high, because they don't remember what it's like to be that high. So they steal their high so they can feel it again, like vampires, because they don't know how to contact this light force energy that everybody can have access to if they learn the actual.
But there'd have to be a ceremony. This is where you start looking at that legendary Luciferian word.
Right.
In order to enter levels of consciousness, whether it's chemically induced or it's esoterically induced, you have to have a ceremony or a tradition
Hmm.
that allows you that access. It isn't just because it's ayahuasca or it's adrenochrome. It has to do with a ceremony or a tradition, because everything has to be guided. There
Right.
is no free forming in the ethereal world. It may appear to, like D-lysergic acid, dathylene trititrate, LSD and DMT and those kinds of adventures. But it's always got to be a guided program. But I agree. What's happening in power and control and compromise, and what we've been living since 1871 is coming to a head. So do I believe that there is going to be a grand event? Yes. Do I believe that we're living in that grand event right now? Yes. And here's why. I always knew from 1975 that the battle for the souls of humankind would be fought in healthcare. And I have given my whole life from that day when I could get up and walk after 2 years to this battle for the souls of humankind. When Hillary started to create a Canadian model of the British model of healthcare, because of universal healthcare in 1983, I knew the game had started. And then when 2010, when affordable healthcare came into play, I knew that it was the middle of what I had been seeing and what I was living to do. And when I saw Joe's bus saying a battle for the souls of America, for the soul of America on the side of a bus, and it's all about healthcare. What the healthcare model is going to be, equal to what the Democrats are saying, and Donald doesn't have one. Donald never created a comprehensive plan. He was just too busy trying to get rid of Obamacare, affordable health care, and he never developed a strategy. Well, the Joe and Kamala and the Democratic platform have come up with a strategy. It's called the option in, which is not, it's just socialized medicine, but it eliminates much of what the power of the insurance company is, which is already an evil force anyway. But it limits their power and hopes that'll pay for it. But you're talking in American money, $3 trillion.
But you know how we pay for it in Canada, Danny? Like when my daughter Lyra was born, October 23rd, 2010 in Arizona, my wife went into labor. We had a midwife, which we paid for, $3,000. The labor was going on for 2 days. So we went to the hospital in Flagstaff. She didn't take any drugs, didn't have a cesarean. Born in the hospital, we get this bill when you leave. And the bill, they say, if you pay this in cash now, we'll save you $30,000 because it's going to be $30,000 more if you walk out that door. So
yeah, it's
the
now
whole bill
70%.
No, it's 10, so we paid 10 grand, right? Now in Canada, what they do here is the natural resource taxes on gas and oil and mines, it subsidizes the medical industry. So what we pay is so little for complete total coverage. Now, why Obamacare was difficult for people is it was going to hurt the middle class and the poor pocketbooks. But what we do in the province next to us, Alberta, they don't pay anything now, zero, because their gas and oil pays for it.
Sure.
So if medical in America did the same thing, as you make all those oil companies extracting all those natural resources in the entire, 50 states, that will at very least subsidize half of it, at the very least. It depends on how much you want to tax them. So it is getting paid for, but it's when you keep imposing another tax, like a carbon emission tax from the Paris Accord,
Sure.
you keep hurting the families. And that's why they're losing their kids. They become drug addicts because they're stressing out their kids. Eventually they lose them to child services. Child services gets paid to take your kid. They freaking pay these people. And
Sure.
And that scared me in Arizona when we were living in Sedona. So we moved back here. And yeah, there's things about a socialized country like this. You don't see as much wealth going into exotic ideas like space programs and things like that. We don't have much of a military here, but our natural resource tax pays for our medical and for families. But at the same time, it's still hard for young families here. I mean, there are things the
No, come
government
on.
does.
But it's a design though, David.
It's a
I
design.
like Canada. It just gets too cold for me.
Mhm.
I mean, I used to do the Learning Annex tours, and I just absolutely love Canada.
Mhm.
And I love the Canadian people have incorporated diversity better than any other country on the earth.
So,
I think that's great. So I have enjoyed this chat.
me too, Dannion. I'd like to continue a part two when you have time. I like where we're going here. I mean, it's all about design in the end. It's all about structure and how you design it and what works. But I
Structuring
think
intention
the
and
family unit.
being able to create a constant in that intention.
Yeah.
I mean, this and I like your equipment and I appreciate you, David. I saw you when in Sedona. I watched, and I'm an observer of nature. And people who know me know I listen to the sound of a person's voice. And everybody has a certain sound that's their frequency, their mantra in this, and I can hear that spiritual identity of a person. And then I just listen to conjugation of the verb. So I appreciate your audience, and I appreciate you and this wonderful staff you have, Shaw. This is an absolutely magnificent human being, and I am very sincerely thankful to her. But I enjoy being in your company, and I appreciate your efforts. So go get your daughter.
Gotta go get her.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dannion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dannion.
Be loved and be blessed. Was that
Thank you. Love you.
Love you with all my heart. Take
Thank
care.
you.
And
Thank you.
tell David to have me back.
I will. We'll arrange it.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
God, well, thank you very much. So go back to chapter 5, box 12, and you will live it word for word. Chapter 5 tells you the story.
Okay.
Well, I want to help David.
Absolutely.
What do you like the most about David?
What I love the most about David is the fact that whatever he's doing with his products and services is all as a result of his divine and spiritual communication with the Lord. And so that's my passion for supporting him and helping promote his products and services.
Okay, well, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's
Okay.
spooky. You're so funny.
Hi, Dannion.
Hey, how are you?
I have no idea what a great honor this is.
I'm extremely happy and excited about it myself
Yay.
because I watched David for a long time, and I see a wonderment about him, especially when he was with his kids and around his kids. And so
Absolutely.
this is something I appreciate.
Here we go. Here's David.
Hey, Daddy, you want to see a secret spot?
Yeah, where is it?
It's over here. Follow me.